Yes, I can hear you now. Okay. Um, okay. So I can speak now, right?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Well, it's been up and down, but mostly up, I would say in general. You know, so after my first educational degree in economics and statistics, I saw the need to, you know, the way the industries in most African countries are tailored, where you have situations where the skills or the training you've acquired um, as a basic as a basic knowledge in terms of your BSc or MSc, you don't get to apply them in industries. It's tough at that level, being able to transit from theory to applications. But for me, I was able to do that. So my first professional experience in the area of data was in 2011. Okay, so but that was basically research-based data. So collection of data, organizing data, and making presentations. But the real thing began in 2012 when I got into the financial market. Okay, so my role there was just to crunch data. So I'm basically tasked with the function of looking at historical data in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and then building models to say, how can we go further from there? So obviously from historical data, if there are problems, what can we do with the data to be able to forecast? And I did that from 2012 to 2016 very well. And then I resigned to start up my own business in the same area as a data analyst, a data scientist, more or less, more of a data analyst than a data scientist anyway. And between 2016 to date, I've been able to apply data, not just in financial markets, as it were, but in the area of health, in the area of oil and gas, energy, in the area of water and waste management, and until recently in the area of retail. Okay, so you could see that my application of the requisite skill and tools it's quite diverse. So, and then I met talent, and I met you guys, and I said, okay, fine, this is good. So,
Okay. All right. Sounds very very good. So I think next question I want to know is that in terms of the kind of opportunities that you're looking for, what's that in terms of like is it full-time remote work? What's like the base salary you're looking for? And what kind of like work environment are you also looking forward to?
okay. In terms of contract, I'm open to both full time and I'm also open to freelancing. Um, any form of the contract, provided it's remote.
Mhm.
Then also in terms of environment, when you say environment, are you referring to firm culture or just physical environment?
No, I mean like in terms of remote work, like maybe being supervised or just working autonomously, um, yeah, that kind of environment.
Okay, okay, I can work autonomously. I'm quite skilled, so I may not require supervision. However, if there's a process based on the company that there has to be supervision or review at every phase of the project, that's perfectly fine by me. Then on the last question, I think $5,000 and above per month should work.
Okay, all right. Okay, sounds good. So I think now we can speak about like your most interesting projects or projects that you would like to share about, and you can speak on this based on like what it was, like what even brought about the need for the project, how you rationalized it, the tools you used in the process, and what the business impact of it was.
Oh, okay. I've got a couple of interesting projects, so many of them, but I will just pick out the most recent ones. I would speak on two projects. One basically in the area of data analysis, and the other in the area of machine learning. So the first one would be Google Marketing Performance Analysis. Okay, so in that project, the objective was to look at certain parameters and how they affect company revenue. Okay, so for example, you're an individual, a company, you have a website. So you want to see how your website is growing in terms of the product and services you have available. But to be able to move further from where you are, you need to be able to look at historical data and then build a model to say, okay, fine, this is where we're going, this is what we can learn, this is what we can improve, and this is what we expect to get in the next 6 months, half year, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. That's the forecast part. So in doing that, I used IBM SPSS on demand. I also used Excel. So the punchline of the analysis was to include all of the parameters. So parameters here, I'm referring to traffic variables, or variables that determine traffic in the website. You also be looking at engagement rates, which is the level of engagement of the customers that visit the website and may end up buying the product, and also conversion rate. So conversion rate, obviously, it speaks to e-commerce. So there you then say people who have come to the website, people who came to the website, visited, went to the product catalog, and finally paid for it. So 3 major independent variables, I would like to call them that. So that's traffic, engagement, and e-commerce. Now, the whole idea is to see how 3 of them independently and in combined form drive revenue for the company. So the basic findings for us is we came to realize that you don't have a one-size-fits-all situation, right? So for example, if you're to model traffic rate against revenue, that won't be enough to give you a clue as to where you should be going. If you model engagement rate singly as a function of revenue, the same thing. But if you model the 3 variables, okay, in one model, you'll be able to see clearly, in more definitive sense, where you're going, you know, and our parameters showed us that we cannot work with just traffic rate without having to look at engagement rates, variables or parameters, if you like, and e-commerce conversion rate. So to make firm business decision, you would need to consider all of the variables or all of the parameters in a website before you then say, yes, this is what it is. So.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to say that you mentioned that. So first of all, this project, how did you apply the this particular project that you've spoken about?
Okay, there are two processes that I had to follow. One was explorative data analysis. So in exploratory data analysis, I wanted to understand the data. I wanted to look at location where we are. So to do that, I had to introduce charts, histogram, bar chart across different demography, customer demography. Of course, you have to look at gender. You have to look at the age of the customers. So what is driving sales? Are you looking at millennials? Are you looking at people older? Are you looking at teenagers, for example? And those are demography. Also, I had to look at psychographic variables like lifestyle and spending habit of the different demography. And then went forward to do a cross-tabulation. Now, cross-tabulation allows me to say pair demography against psychography. Then you'll be able to say the particular age bracket or the particular gender that has a unique set of lifestyle or spending pattern. Now, all of this is just to understand what I have in my hands, not to validate, obviously. Also, in that regard, I also looked at country analysis. So, but because the company is a global company, right? We want to look at the customers all over the world. Yeah, and we had 131 countries to be precise. And then we're looking at, for each of the countries, what was their contribution in terms of course, the variables, traffic rates, engagement rate, and e-commerce. And I did a geospatial analysis in that regard to see which country had the highest representation in terms of website viewing, for a start, and in terms of product buying. I use geospatial, basically. Then that's obviously the first phase, which is exploratory data analysis. The second phase is then the predictive data analysis, and there I just used a regression analysis and a correlation analysis. So what I wanted to do is look at patterns and behavior and effect. So with correlation, I'm saying, okay, fine, there's traffic rate, there's engagement rate, there's revenue. Since revenue is my dependent, I'm asking myself, what's the level of association, or what happens to revenue when traffic rate increases or decreases? The same with engagement rate and e-commerce. That's correlation. Then I went forth to do regression. Now regression allows me to then predict ahead. So with regression, I was able to look into the future, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then 5 years, to say this is how much revenue we can make if traffic rate is increased to say 16%, engagement rate to 10%, and e-commerce rate to, let's say, 5%. Okay, so that was the process.
All right. So what company, was it an e-commerce company that you did this for?
No, it's well, I signed an NDA not to share the name of the company. So, but basically it came from an agency, okay, that works for the company. So, but part of the NDA was I don't reveal anything like specific details. You know, so.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. But in terms of the business outcome, what was the impact of this particular project?
Okay, the impact for us was I came to realize that on the level of decision making, or firm level decision making, that you would have to consider all of the variables, all variables that determine traffic, engagement, and e-commerce, to be able to say exactly which of the variables is more important. Because, you know, as a business person, you want to be sure you're focusing on a particular area that drives your market. So, and for that, we've got to realize that even though e-commerce conversion rate is more important, traffic is very, very important. And you can't be talking about engagement and engagement and e-commerce conversion rate if you don't have traffic to your website. So we had to say, in terms of policy recommendation, to say there are things that has to be done to generate leads and traffic to the website, at least for a start. So we have a situation where people just come, read, view first, then hopefully read before they then say, okay, fine, we want to buy. So that was it.
Okay, all right. And so did you do this independently or with a team?
Independently.
Okay. And so far, have you had the chance to work with a team, or do you usually work most times as like independently, in terms of, and I'm asking this question because I know that for a lot of like data science projects, there are points where you get input from other professionals like the analysts and the scientists and all of that. So are there points where you have to collaborate with other professionals on a particular project, or do you mostly just do projects by yourself?
No, I have projects that I've done independently, and I also have some that I've been able to work with teams. And I think that of course brings me to the next project. You know, that one was basically in the area of machine learning, and I had to work with a three-man team rather. Okay, so that was basically on gear prediction, like cars, automobile gear prediction. So of course we are 4 in number, and we had to work on the project. The project, of course, there was no NDA. It's a good thing, but it's also an agency that works for Hertz. Hertz is HERTZ. So it's basically about prediction, more or less about prediction. So we had to look at the components that determines the performance of a car. For example, in-dash transmission, you know, speedometer and all other variables. And then we said, okay, fine, let's look at it. And again, the company was looking to get into a situation where they would start to do, Uber services. Okay, so they wanted to know how mileage would affect the price that you would charge a customer and all of that. So we were 4 in number, and I worked with the team. So most of my projects, to be sincere, 70% of them requires me to work independently, right? 30% requires me to work as a team. And I think the difference is the scope, because then the scope is that large where you have different inputs. Let's say someone to handle database, basically, which is mostly data engineering, or you have a situation where you have big data. Then obviously you have to get people who are at the top in terms of the skill level, so that the project will come out very nice.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I just want to piggyback on the projects that you mentioned that had to do with the gear. Can you walk me through maybe exactly your inputs on it, as well as the tools you use to solve the issue?
Okay, the project had 3 phases, right? The first phase was basically data engineering, or if you like, being able to structure our data structuring, because it was unstructured and it was all over the place. So some other person handled it and did it and sent it to me. So my role basically is just to use the data, okay, to do, of course, the punchline for every to every data is to do exploratory data analysis to understand the data, to see how it works, and then go forward to do the prediction. So I use Python for that. So Python for EDA, exploratory data analysis, and Python for prediction. So in prediction, first and first, I had to do feature engineering. So what that means is this: I had to look at my data and say, okay, fine, let's look at what would have happened in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Okay, what would have happened, because it's an assumption, and of course, it's also a set of code. And after doing that, I did classification, so using supervised machine learning. So what that does is to allow me to look at 2 things: one, performance prediction, and there I was able to use linear regression. I used neural networks. I used XGBoost. Okay, and I used what's the other one? Yeah, XGBoost. So the idea is to compare the different models in terms of to see which one fits the data more, and then pick out 2 elements. Now the 2 elements here is root mean square error, and that simply means is a value that tells you the accuracy level of each of the model you've used, or the prediction level. So, or the error level. So if the error level is low, let's say less than 1, it simply means that there's high accuracy or prediction. They are just 2 ways of saying one thing. And then the other component is the scores, or the R-square scores. So that would tell you the overall regression fitness, okay, in terms of the data. And in that regard, you're hoping that you should get something at the level of 0.7, 0.8, because of course it lies between 0 and 1. So the higher it is, the higher it tends to 1, the better. The more it tends to 0, well, not too good. So, but you want a situation where at least 0.9 and above, you get that. So I was able to do that, and I was able to get the performance of each one of them. And then the next step would be to put it in a slide, in a PowerPoint slide, and then present to management. And of course, another member of the team had to do that. So that's just a run through.
Okay, so what was the biggest challenge in this particular project? Did you encounter any
biggest challenge? Yes, we did. The biggest challenge was the first phase, which had to do with the data structuring. It's, like I said earlier, it was all over the place, because we had to go to different, and I think this is typical of data science. I think you just want to have your data in one place. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's it. That's one thing you want to have all the time. Data in one place, that's one, and then 2, they have to be in indefinite column fields and rows. But in this regard, we had data from 2 different sources, and it became a bit more challenging at the point of breaking down the data to say, okay, fine, how do we put it to have, how do we make it to have, consistent column fields and consistent row? A situation where you have a particular variable or column field at, let's say, 15,000 rows, and then the other one at 12,000 rows, now giving rise to missing data situation, right? But it's a good thing. Once you're able to deal with that and you bring it to Python, you can easily account for missing data. It's just one line of code, so I think it's the first part, data structuring, that really gave us a problem.
Okay, so I'm wondering, was it something you did? I'm just curious to know how you were able to clean that data to ensure that values are not missing.
Okay, so there are two things we did because we had to go back and forth. We had to put all the data in Excel, okay, in Excel, because Excel is very good when it comes to data entry, and I think it's the best so far. So after doing that, we had to import it to SQL. Another member of the team did that. I did the Excel part to make sure that everything is in one frame, data frame. So importing it to SQL allows us to have, of course, we'll have the set of unique primary keys and secondary keys all aligned in columns, so that's just a nutshell of what we did at that stage. So, but okay. Of course, in Excel, we had to move it to CSV. And then from CSV, we then had to import to SQL. Okay.
So also, what you currently do you currently work with a company, or you currently work as in contract with separate companies?
Okay, in contract with different companies and different individuals. So that's like full-time freelancer. So.
Okay, I understand now. All right, so what would you say in your career, what's your biggest point of strength technically, meaning that's something that you can do very effortlessly, come very easily to you? Also, what's that part of data science in general that maybe is your weakness, something that you are not so interested about? Also in terms of your soft skills, what would you say is your point of strength as well as your weakness?
Okay, in response to your first question, I think it's consistent with what your mail says. What you said earlier on about, your vision statement, and the fact that there are three broad categories: data analysis, data science, and data engineering. I think in general, before I get to myself, in general, I think every one individual should have, among these three areas, should have an area of utmost strength, and then the other ones would be basically, right. Okay, I'm good here and there. So, but for me, it's basically data analytics. So under that, of course, there are three subcategories, and that is data management or structuring, where you can use Excel, SQL, and all of that. Data visualization, where you have Power BI, Tableau, and of course Excel. And of course, the final part, statistical analysis. Okay, that's just it for me. So in the area of data science, the clear difference is machine learning and artificial intelligence. I don't do AI. I like AI. I like what AI has been able to do, but I'm not an AI person. I understand AI, but in terms of project-based, I'm not there yet. But machine learning, of course, I'm there. So, but I think I also need to improve on my SQL skills. Okay, that's database basically, because I think over the years I've mastered Excel to a level where I think I had, thought that Excel can handle everything. But you see, when it comes to big data, that is where the difference between SQL and Excel comes in, and of course Hadoop and Spark. So for me, I think that's an area of improvement as well. In terms of weakness, I think sometimes I could be fast. Speed. Speed is supposed to be a weakness and a strength, but sometimes it could be a weakness. So speed. I apply myself, I have the culture of speed, the faster the better. But you see, sometimes you want things to be ordered, and if they are ordered, then speed obviously, even though it's important, should be secondary.
Okay. So in terms of your strength as the soft for your soft skill.
Okay, good communication skills that needs working, because I think whatever skill you have, of course, needs improvement every week, every month. So communication skills, ability to work in a team, ability to work under intense pressure, because of course, when you're working on tasks like this that requires lots of input, you need to be able to handle pressure and deadlines. So, and also ability to stay consistent and losing focus. That's also very important.
Okay. Okay. So I think it's a good time to introduce Stephen on this call. He's been on this call for a while. And he is really a decision assistant at the Gradient Boost. I just want to know, Stephen, do you have any questions for Kingsley? Okay, all right. He says you don't. He doesn't.
Yes, I see that. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
All right. So do you have any questions for me?
Okay. In your earlier mail, you said you're more like an agency, right? A middle person that helps organizations to look for people, people who have the skill to do the job, right? So,
Exactly.
mind if I ask, just give me an example of these organizations. That's one. And then two, are they 100% remote, or do they encourage 100% remote work?
Okay, so examples of some of the organizations we have worked with, there's I think there's Brass. Brass is a company that we're currently still working with in filling a role. There's Cobra 360. There's also OneCart. And so there's a mix of both high growth companies as well as companies in the US. And so far, the roles have been mostly remote for the people that we have connected. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So do you have any other question?
And my second question, I wanted to know if it's 100% remote. Whether there's, yeah.
Please go on. Whether there's what?
Yes, I wanted to know if the jobs or the projects are 100% remote, or would that be a situation where you would need to physically move?
I mean, our ethos is really towards having that remote, having it remote. However, I mean, I always just think of say never, because I mean, there could be companies that would have relocation offers or something, or opportunities, but I mean, historically they have always been just full-time or contract remote roles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's about
it. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Kingsley, for joining this call. The call will be reviewed by our internal team, and then we would now determine the status of your profile. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
enjoy the rest.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you too. Thanks a lot.